Inuit youth living in Nunavut are 4 times more likely to be sexually abused than other Canadian youth.
And the suicide rate in that region is 10 times the national average.
Today you will hear about a ministry that is reaching these young people and leading hundreds to the Lord.
Stephen Carleton is our guest, so stay tuned.
And welcome to LifeLine today. Good to have you with us. We've got a great program lined up for you, but let me remind you, our prayer center is open and it gets busy in there. So it's a good time to call if you have a prayer request, a prayer need. And thank you for being a partner of the program. We really appreciate it. It is something that right now, Joan, we really feel that God is leading us to a larger expansion
the hand of God is on this ministry, isn't it?
The hand of God is moving us to enlarge our broadcasting footprint. So.
Yeah.
But today, we were talking at the opener about the issues facing Inuit youth. And with us today is a very good friend of ours and ministry that we've known for many, many years, is Stephen Carleton with Bill Prankard Evangelistic Association. Welcome to the program.
Welcome, Stephen.
Oh, look, thank you guys for having me.
Good to see you again.
Like, I know that the stories, the friendship between this ministry and you guys goes back a long time. So
a long way.
It's it's for me, it's a great honor to be with you guys.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's true. When we first opened Christian television, and we weren't national yet, one of the people that would come and spend a lot of time and were Bill and Gwen.
Yeah.
In fact, we could tell you the story about one night on a broadcast, live broadcast. Bill and Gwen was with Joan and I, and we finally just set the tape on loop and we went for Boston Pizza because it was so done. No calls.
That sounds like Bill, yeah.
Well, that sounds like pioneering too, doesn't it?
It was the pioneer days, yeah. But we're here to talk to you because you're president of Bill Prankard Evangelistic Association today. You're a facilitator of the Arctic Hope Project. Yeah. You're doing some groundbreaking faith-based projects up in that part of the world, Nunavut, and reaching hundreds and hundreds of Inuit youth who are very high suicide rate.
Yeah, it's highest in the world. And Joan, you mentioned the suicide rates before. When you break it down by age demographics, you look at Inuit 18 to 25, the rates change. And when we started Arctic Hope Project 2014, we learned that it was 42 times national average in that age group.
Wow.
So just a tremendous amount of brokenness, really.
And it's gone down since 2014.
Since 2014, that's right.
This is absolutely amazing.
Well, just explain to us what the Arctic Hope Project is and what is your mission? What has been your mission?
So it was 2014. My wife Becky and I, we were just traveling with Bill.
You have a beautiful family, by the way.
Well, they're the jewel of my eye. All 4 girls, Becky, my 3 girls. Left them this morning. My wife, she was coughing. She had a cold, and you might say that's a great time to leave. It's also a terrible time to leave. But 2014, we were traveling with Bill, and we got word of an 11-year-old boy in a Nunavut community called Cape Dorset. Happens to be the same community that Bill first built his church, first church in the Arctic, back in the 1970s. 11-year-old boy in this community in September 2014 took his life. And at that point in time, Bill, we're all absolutely devastated. My family comes from a community not that far away from...
You're part Inuit.
Yeah, half Inuit, half Scottish. So really right down the middle, best of both worlds. And
Canadian.
Canadian. True Canadian, that's right. So, so we launched the Arctic Hope Project in response to that 11-year-old boy's, what happened there. And it started out just by giving youth conferences to young people. The thought was young people need to experience the presence of God. And our thought was that if people can encounter God's love, perhaps things can change in their lives, because we serve an amazing God who really, can make a big difference in people's lives. And so that was the idea. We started with that, and then we started mentoring them, discipling them right afterwards. So it was Cape Dorset. We were there for about 2-3 years, doing that year after year. So,
Stephen, your ministry is touching people, and you're saying there's a tremendous problem with addictions. and then addictions that lead to sexual abuse, and then this is a perpetuating cycle. And this is what's causing the high rates. But we should just mention that you yourself were a victim of abuse. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it wasn't in the Arctic. It was in Ottawa at a church that my family had been going to. I met Jesus at this church, so my life was changed, I guess, in two ways: meeting Christ, but then also being abused by a man who was attending that church, and he came into my life as a bit of a mentor, older brother type.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of trust there, and then the trust was violated, and
of course,
it just the whole thing becomes, what do you do? And you don't even really know that that's what you're thinking. Like that's your response to that type of thing is, what are you supposed to do now? But that's the hopelessness, let's say, that creeps into your heart and really just starts a downward spiral. So my grades dropped the moment I became legal drinking age in Quebec, because Ottawa, Quebec, just a lake that divides the two. So we would run across the border and we'd get to drinking and partying there. And I knew that if I continued that type of drinking, because of what had happened to me, high likelihood that I would have become an alcoholic.
My goodness.
It scared me, Joan. It really scared me. And I just thought, Jesus is the one that can sort this out. So I said, Lord, I need you back in my life. And it happened that there was a Christian counselor at Bill's church, the Dominion Outreach Center at the time. And so that's where I met Bill. And Bill said, look, we'll cover your counseling fees. We just want you to be healed and restored.
That's really good.
And you had, which is really, this is the miracle. You were healed.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people in your situation, they go through it, but they don't get healed. They get partially healed or they improve, but they don't get where you got.
Well, yeah, one of the scary things that we discovered when we were doing a lot of the fact-finding and research towards the Arctic Hope Project was that we discovered the RCMP estimates something like 80% of the teenagers living in Nunavut right now between the ages of 11 to 17 have been or will be sexually abused.
That's just horrendous.
It's absolutely crazy.
Wow.
And as you said before, it's just it's abuse and then addictions, and then the way that you cope with your pain is you drink.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the teenagers that we speak to, that it happens when said victimizer is drunk.
I want to go back to May 17, because it was a real turning point for you again, where God spoke to you and gave you a word.
That's right.
Just
So May of 2017, there was a minister in town in Ottawa, and he was preaching out of Mark chapter 5, and this whole amazing story of the power of God delivering this man filled with legion, like unmentionable amount of demons in this.
Yes.
This man, in one moment, the presence of God touches his life, and all those demons leave.
Yeah.
And the man said, I want to follow Jesus, I want to be a disciple. And Jesus turned him away and said, nope, go back to your people. Tell them how the mercy and kindness of God has changed your life.
Yeah.
And the Lord spoke to me in that moment and said, in 2018, you are to go to Nunavut, all of the communities. So far, we'd been focused on one or two.
Yeah.
And the Lord said, you are to go to every community, preach the gospel, tell young people that I can heal sexual abuse. And the Lord said he would fund the entire campaign. And so last year, myself and a worship leader, we traveled to Braden Sharpenberg.
He's been on the program.
Been on the program before, great guy. The two of us, we traveled to 21 communities last year. It was flat out. My wife had just given birth to our third daughter. In January, we started traveling the end of February. I was gone 92 days, that year, and then the remaining 5 communities we've tackled this year. But, you mentioned earlier hundreds of teenagers. We counted over 700 salvations across Nunavut. Young people, parents, elders who've just said, I need Jesus. I need change in my life. And you never know what God is going to do, what the end result is when he gives you a word, hey? But you just say, okay, I have a word, and
I've got to interject here because I don't think our viewers understand the scope of what you're actually saying. You're talking about one of the most remote areas in the world. Our Canadian North is massive, and then very small clusters of communities. There's no roads between them, and you have to fly between these communities. The North is notorious for bad weather, so you can fly, and then some days you can't, and you have to stay. If you stay, you're in a hotel where which are very rudimentary, and the accommodations are pretty expensive, and the food is very expensive. We're talking about some of the biggest obstacles of reaching young people people that you could possibly imagine, and then you've gone to every community.
Yeah.
You made a commitment because God told you.
Yeah.
I just want to emphasize this because
I appreciate you did.
I don't think people get the idea. They've got to see you're super about this
And
thing.
the thing is that it's not like a metropolitan center that you're going to, like many of these communities are communities of 200, 400 people. And you're having, you said you've had over 700 people give their lives to Jesus over the last 18 months.
You know, Joan, like the smallest community that we traveled to happens to be Canada's most northern community, Grise Fiord.
Yeah.
I just saw a time lapse of the crazy storm that blew in while we were there. Planes were delayed. 130 people live in this town.
Yeah.
Right at the top of literally this continent.
Yeah.
And we had about 50 people come out to our meeting.
Out of 150.
Out of 130. And then about half of the crowd got saved that day. You know, it's just so amazing. Like, you consider John 4, where Jesus said, like, the fields are ripe for harvest.
Absolutely.
Laborers are few. And that seems to be the age-old problem, is just people being able to go, or the willingness to go.
Yes, right.
You know, and in the Arctic, I mean, it's absolutely one of the best places to minister because, number one, you know, there's a real hunger, but number two, there's a brokenness for the message of hope. And 700 people have responded. Countless, you know, few thousands other have heard our testimonies. So, yeah, it's...
And the other thing is that the people are so precious, aren't they? They're just such wonderful people.
Now, since 2014 and 2017, you going, are you building relationships so that when you come now, they're like, come on, Stephen?
Well, yeah, that's the beauty of, I guess, of continuity, but also social media. So Facebook, we're able to now post in all of these communities because we have contacts. We have friends in every one of these communities. So it really, you know, the Lord is quite smart, and we now have the whole of the Arctic with contacts with people that we can say, hey, we're coming. We need you to put together a meeting.
Did you ever have any sense, prophetic sense, at some point when you were just getting healed and all this, that God was one day going to have you as the president of a ministry, evangelistic ministry, reaching the north like you do?
No, I mean, like, never. So Mom and Dad, like, they've been quite involved financially supporting Bill and Gwen over the years.
They supported us too.
That's right.
Over the years. Yeah.
And, you know, by the way, Mom used to watch your program back in the early 2000s in the Arctic, you know, and so it's just, it's absolutely amazing. But yeah, I mean, during the whole thing, I mean, it was just, I had all this pain in my heart. And I said, God, if you can take the sting of these memories away by your love, by your power, that would be enough for me.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's just the kindness of God. You look back now, and I've got a beautiful wife, beautiful family, 3 little girls. Opportunity now to look at 80% of the teenagers living in Nunavut right now, to say, look them in the eyes and say, God can heal you of the worst thing that's ever happened to your life.
And you know what, Stephen, that's what they need to hear, because they don't have the hope to believe that until someone like you, who comes to them and says, I've been where you are.
Yeah.
So do you hear that from them?
Often. And it's at a, you know, you just become so appreciative of God and Him taking the burden. But it does become overwhelming at times to hear just the sheer hurt that so many people live with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
You know, that's the part that really you just say, God, thank you for what you do.
When an 11-year-old feels there's no option but to kill themselves.
Wow.
And of course, I think now there's a mindset. It's built into the culture to some degree because there's so many.
Yeah.
You were telling us earlier about one community that was suicide-free, and then all of a sudden there was like 30 or 35 kids that either attempted or tried.
Well, it was an amazing little thing because in 2017, about the same time that I got the word to travel to all of Nunavut, 2017, the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada, the Eastern Ontario and Nunavut District, all of the churches in that district partnered with the Arctic Hope Project that year, and raised support for what we're doing, but also the focus was to pray for one community. And we had about 80 churches praying for this one community throughout the entire year, which was amazing. We were able to minister there. We launched a single mothers counseling program.
Yes.
And then at the end of the year, we got word that there wasn't a single suicide in that community, which you know, when you consider 1,200 people living in this town, that doesn't sound like that it's that big of a deal. That hadn't happened in 17 years. So for 17 years, there's at least one suicide in that community. And then the year that we have all of these Christians, all of these prayers, and being lifted up for this one community, not a single suicide. So you mentioned 30 of these kids, though. It was, it was January of 2018. Just after we got word that there was not a single suicide in that community, we all start praising God. And then we hear that 30 of the teenagers living in that community tried to overdose on pills, whatever was in the cabinets of the homes that they're living in.
And you were saying they were hearing voices telling them to go and get these pills and take them.
Yeah, well, we went there in March of that same year, well, just 2 months later, ministered to 22 of those 30 kids. Every single one of them said it was voices. And the moment we got praying for them, the moment we said, Lord, please let your peace touch this young person's life, voices stopped immediately.
Wow.
And just the tears that come out of their eyes, because now they feel some form of relief from the torment that these voices were. And so I'm convinced, you know, that there's a certain percentage that might be dealing with schizophrenia, you know, but also vast majority of them we're hearing demonic voices trying to take their lives.
I think that's what we have to understand here is there's a huge spiritual component, demonic spiritual component.
Yeah.
And this, when you see these kinds of things, then you realize just how real spiritual warfare is.
Really.
And much of the culture down here in southern parts of the nation don't think that way so much, but that's really very real. And in these communities, extremely so.
Well, and it's, you hear like little children say that they see people like levitating in homes, they see spirits running around.
Wow.
It's rampant. But what we're seeing now, Dick, is a generation who was absolutely bombarded with the hopelessness, you know, from what had happened, experiencing hope now, and really lives are being changed and impacted.
So the statistics that we mentioned in the intro, you know, 4 times likely to be sexually abused, 10 times the suicide rate. Have you seen a change overall in those statistics?
Well, yeah, sometimes you just kind of, you put your hand to the plow and you just don't even really know what's going on. The same time that we heard that there was not a single suicide in Pangertung, the community that we were focused on, we also discovered that, since 2014, amazingly, suicide rates in Nunavut had been declining year by year. So, I mean, you start to think, well, maybe there's just an overall awareness of mental health and, you know, people reaching out. But spiritually speaking, I think as faith people, we can say we serve a big God.
You're a big part of it.
Yeah. So I'm encouraged.
And I think we got to acknowledge that in, you know, the environment that they live, it's not like southern Canada at all. But, you know, it's a very isolated life, very expensive, and you've got modern culture competing with ancient culture, but all of that, and the people there find it very hard to find their place. It used to be very simple to find survive. But now it's a little more.
Do well up there.
Not as easy today, and so you have that clash going on. But you know what? It is the gospel that gives people purpose, isn't it? You know, it's the Bible. It's only the Bible that tells you your origins and your ultimate destiny.
That's right.
It's the Bible, and it's only the Bible that can tell you why you're here. I had a story of someone someone close to us that went to interview someone in the Buddhist religion, and essentially the answers were there were no answers. You know, to these fundamental questions that, well, there's no real answers to. No, there are answers. And Jesus is the answer, and that's what you're saying.
And it's changing lives. You know, like it's absolutely amazing to see just brokenness, real brokenness. The presence of God comes, healing starts to take place. And then lives
I'd like to see some of those meetings.
It must be so wonderful to watch, hey?
Yeah, I mean, like the first young people that we had come through our Arctic Hope leadership program back in 2014, now all of them graduated high school. A few of them now in post-secondary in Ottawa.
That's just amazing.
It's some of these teenagers had attempted their lives, you know, and which is really one of the reasons why we focused on these kids. But the gospel, as you're saying, Dick, is the thing that changes people's hearts.
And I just want to say this, Stephen, you know, ministering in the North is very, very expensive. You know, way more expensive than any other ministry in Canada, you know.
Well, what's a flight compared to, like, okay, airline flights in, let's say, in the southern Canadian domestic flights and the flight to the north?
So flew from Ottawa to Calgary this morning. That was about $650. You know, I think round trip, a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
Up to Iqaluit, which is a 3-hour flight from Ottawa to Iqaluit. It's anywhere from $1,400 to $2,500, and that's before you start to get on any of these other smaller planes, other communities. So we average, like the partnership we have with the airline, 75% off one rate. Yeah. We still spend thousands and thousands of dollars just for one person to go up.
So we partner with you personally, but I'm sure that there are people that are watching right now that are saying, you know what, I really want to partner with this ministry. How would they get a hold of you, and how would they do that?
So best way to do it is just to go to bpea.com, just our website. There's a Give Now link, and in there you can either give a one-time donation or become a monthly partner. Monthly partners are the ones that really are the backbone of everything that we do. Ministries and partners such as yourselves.
Yeah.
But
you know, I should tell the viewers that they should connect with Bill Prankard Evangelistic Association on Facebook.
Facebook.
Your Facebook page. You post a lot of videos.
That's right.
And you do it live sometimes. I've seen that.
Yeah.
Right when you're in the north.
Yeah.
You have blizzard behind you.
Yeah. Those look the best, honestly. When you're dying and your nose is about to fall off, they're the best content.
We're going to come back in a few minutes. We're going to talk a little more about how you can support this ministry, and we'll pray for you.
Canada needs a fresh move of God, and you can help by partnering financially with LifeLine Today with Dick and Joan and the breakthrough anointing that's on this ministry. All monthly donors join our unique group of faithful partners, and in appreciation, Dick and Joan will send you a special DVD. In it, Dick and Joan share their hearts and vision for Canada and take time to pray powerfully over you. In addition, we will send you this year's special partner fridge magnet, a reminder that you stand together with Dick and Joan for Canada. Partner at $50 a month and also receive this leather-bound journal entitled Sacred Time, Sacred Place. This journal will bring greater intimacy to your daily time with the Lord. Faith-filled partners giving $100 a month will also receive this elegant journal Bible personally signed with a note of encouragement from Joan. Your tax-deductible donation will empower this ministry to release the prophetic voice of God across our nation. Call today and say yes to becoming a partner with Dick and Joan. Phone 403-942-0123 or email info@dickandjoan.com today.
Hebrews 10:36 says, patient endurance is what you need now, so that you will continue to do God's will. Then you will receive all that He has promised. That word endurance means ability, strength to continue, strength to last, despite fatigue or stress or other adverse conditions. Do you have promises from God's Word that you've been standing on for a long time? This is a word from God for you today. Patiently endure. Holy Spirit is your helper, your strengthener, your standby, which means He will do for you what you cannot do yourself. And we want to stand with you too here at the LifeLine Today Prayer Center. Call us at 403-942-0123.
With us is Stephen Carleton. He's president of the Bill Prankard Evangelistic Association. Just took that over not so long ago, taking many tours. And I love your commitment. You're going to every community.
Mm-hmm.
And that must touch these people, because a lot of people don't do this.
No, it's so we oftentimes are mistaken for government employees, because you get like the odd government techie come in, and nurses are the other ones, you know, for the health centers. But then it's like drug dealers and bootleggers.
Oh,
and oftentimes we were mistaken for drug dealers and bootleggers. We told them we were pastors here to minister the gospel.
Wow.
A lot of people really had a hard time with that. But no, it does. I mean, I think, like Bill Prankard, you know, he traveled not only here in the Canadian Arctic, but in Russian Arctic as well. Mm-hmm. There's something about going and going to places where no one else goes that just really touches the hearts of...
they know you're real.
Yeah.
You know, abuse happens here too.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you would look into the camera and minister to those who have someone in their family that have been abused, or even themselves have experienced this, and maybe just say a few words to them.
You know, I'd love to. Like, the crazy thing is, all across Canada, the churches, different places, we get to talk about the work that we do in the Arctic. The amount of people that come up to me in churches in southern Canada that tell me that they were also abused, it always surprises me. But one thing you have to know, and if I can say this in any conviction at all, it's that Romans 8:28, the God who can turn bad situations, that the enemy intended to really take out your life. You need to know that Romans 8:28, you just start declaring that over your life, that there is a God who can turn bad situations into good ones. The only really caveat there is you just have to love God.
Yes, that's right.
That's the only thing, just those who love God according to his purposes. And it's really just, Lord, I need you in my life. And that's all I prayed then was, God, I don't know how to forgive. I know you require me to forgive, but help me forgive this man who so devastated my life. And you just give it to the Lord, and you find yourself in moments in prayer and in the presence of God. It was about 4 months of prayer and some counseling and changing the people that I was drinking with, all those friends. That is what made the difference. It was the presence of God. It was on my face in prayer and really just allowing the Lord to minister to those broken parts.
You were in fellowship. You were in a good church receiving fellowship, but also worship and ministry to that. And I encourage you, now maybe you might want to connect with the ministry. If you phone our prayer center, certainly get prayer, but we'll connect you with Stephen and with the ministry there, because I know that you'd love to receive from them. And we encourage you to sow and partner with this ministry. Joan and I personally, we partner with this ministry because it is very, very important. You know, I've said this in a program, and I'm going to say it again. You sow where you want to go. If you have issues in your life, then you begin to sow into a ministry that is bringing deliverance. And when you sow, you get there. And so it's not just, oh, help me, but you sow where you want to go. And so I encourage you to do that. Thank you, Stephen, for sharing with us. And, you know, just consider this your open invitation to come and be on the program, feature, bring video of some of your great meetings and
update us on what you're doing.
Update us on what's going on, because I can say this, that if we can see the North healed, you can see the nation healed.
That's right.
But I remember a prophetic act that took place in Pond Inlet. And it was that extraordinary sound. It sounded like a mighty rushing wind that came into a church service in Pond Inlet. And they had the recorder on it, recorded. No, excuse me, they didn't have the recorder on, but it recorded it anyway.
That's right.
It was a miracle. And that we've played on air before. And I believe that was a prophetic act to say what God would do. It might start in the north. Revival in the north and come to the south.
I got talking to the pastors because we were in Pond Inlet just around that time.
We got 10 seconds.
10 seconds. So anyway, absolutely true. God really can move in a mighty way, and it comes out of places in the presence of God.
That's wonderful. Good to have you here, Steve.
Thank you, Stephen. And you can sow into that, and then you can also go. God bless you. See you next time.
This program is supported by viewers like you, and we thank you for partnering with us. We want to hear from you. Send us your prayer requests, praise reports, and comments about the program. To watch past episodes, learn about the ministry, or contact us, visit our website at dickandjoan.com. You can also find us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. To find out how you can have Dick and Joan at your church, event, or conference, call LifeLine today at 587-425-5730 or email info@dickandjoan.com.